With routing, the user can navigate through the application in several ways. The user can click a menu option, link, image, or button that activates or navigates to a route. The user can type the associated URL segment in the address bar after the application URL, or use a bookmark to that URL. Or the user can click the browser's forward or back buttons. The route configuration handles the URLs, so the last techniques will just work. We need to handle the first technique by tying routes to the user actions. We need to decide how we will show the routing options to the user. We could display a navigation pane with links, we can provide a toolbar or images, or we can build a navigation menu like this one. In a more full-featured application, the menu could have many more options and sub-options, but this will do for our purposes. We define that menu as part of this component's template. We then need to tie a route to each menu option. We do that using the router link directive. The router link is an attribute directive, so we add it to an element, such as the anchor tag here, and we enclose it in square brackets. We bind it to a template expression that returns a link parameters array. The first element of this array is the string name of a route. Additional elements can be added to this array to specify optional route parameters. We'll see an example of that later in this module. The router uses this array to locate the associated route and build up the appropriate URL based on any provided parameters. When the user selects the option, the associated route is activated. Activating a component route displays that component's view. As we saw earlier in this course, when we use a directive in a component's template, we must tell Angular where to find that directive. We do that with the directives property of the component decorator. In addition to the router link, the component router provides several other useful routing directives that we'll see throughout this module. To make it easier to work with these directives, the component router gives us a single constant that defines the set of router directives. It's called router_directives. We use that constant here and import it here. We'll need to add this constant to any component that uses a router directive. Now let's add a menu and use the router link directive so the user can navigate to the views in our sample application. First, we need to decide how to show the routing options to the user. For our sample application, we'll build a menu. We want to add that menu at the root of our application, so we'll add it to the app component. In the app component template currently, we're nesting the product list component. Let's replace that with a navigation menu. This menu uses the nav element and the navbar classes from the Twitter Bootstrap styling framework. Let's see how this looks in the browser. Here is our new menu, but clicking on the menu options don't do anything yet, and our product list no longer appears. We need to tie routes to these menu options. We'll use the router link directive to tie a route to each of these menu options. For the home menu option, we'll add the router link to the anchor element, but we could use any clickable element. We want to tie the welcome route to the home menu option, so we specify welcome here. Pay close attention to this syntax. We assign the router link directive to an array defined within quotes. The first element of the array is a string, so it is also enclosed in quotes. We'll use similar syntax to tie the products route to the product list menu option. We then need to tell Angular where to find the router link directive, so we add the router_directives constant to the directives property here in the component decorator, and we import the router directives constant. Let's look back at the directives property. We currently specify the product list component here because we were using the product list component as a directive in this template. Now that the product list component is no longer nested in the app component, we can remove it from here. And since we are no longer nesting the product list component, we can remove its selector. So we have the import, we have the directives array, and we have the router link directives defined to tie the routes to these menu options. Let's give it a try. Now we see our menu options again. If we click on our menu options, our links don't appear to work. But if you look in the address bar, you can see that they are actually working. They are setting the URL to the appropriate URL segment. They are just not displaying the view. That's because we have not yet told the router where to put that view.